Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hardcore Fab Shop. Told you guys last video or two ago that we were going to get a new project in the shop. Actually, we're going to get a couple new projects in the shop that we're going to be working on at the same time that we're working on our C50 build. So it's time to introduce you to what I thought was going to be our second project here in the shop that you guys are going to get to see. And that is this old 51 Chevy right here. We've got a lot of cool things going on with this thing. But there's a lot of problems going on with it as well, so I'm going to give you guys a quick little tour of this thing, and then you guys can let me know if you agree with me on whether or not we should even be working on this car. So lots happened to this thing before we got a hold of it. So you can see right off the bat, you know, like the headlights are Frenched in. We got the hood welded up through that seam in the middle, got the top chopped on it. So some of that stuff's pretty cool, right? I mean, you know, the welds aren't super great around the headlights and things like that, but we can make that work. That wouldn't be that big of a deal. And we got some warpage going on in the hood from welding that up incorrectly, but that there again as well, we can take care of. So not the end of the world on any of that. But it's not really more what you guys see right here that I feel like is the problem. It's really what's going on underneath here that's the problem. All right, let's start at the back of this thing, kind of work our way forward. I mean, first of all, we got the bumper brackets kind of just welded here to the frame, which I guess whatever, I don't know, but not much of a weld on that one. And we got air lines that are, you know, hose clamped together with a T for both sides. If you guys are ever doing airbags on the back of something, the T is a no-no. Because what happens is you get air transferring from one bag to the other when you go through a corner, and it actually increases the roll of the body and makes it even worse. So don't do that. Then we look at the bags themselves. They too also have, you know, the fittings on there and hose clamps, just like a regular barb fitting in there. And the top of the bag isn't even mounted to anything. I mean, I suppose they were trying to mount it up there maybe, where that, let's see if I can get that to focus. Up there where the old leaf spring or coil spring was at, but I mean, they didn't weld it, and I don't know how they were supposed to access it if they did weld it, so I guess that's why they didn't weld it. I don't know. They just poorly planned that whole situation. The back of this thing is like a Monte Carlo. I think the front and back is actually Monte Carlo, and they cut the frame in half, so it's got the Monte Carlo style 4-link stuff in there, and that really isn't all that great for an airbag system either. But you can see where they put a whole entire floor pan in this thing on the back in the trunk. Of course, we didn't do anything other than just lay it right over the top and probably just a few tacks to hold it in there. There's absolutely no bracing in any of that. Nothing. No structure there to hold that, just a piece of sheet metal. And we can move ourselves forward here a little bit. We can see where they've done the same thing on the rest of the floor. We've just left the rusty spots there and the cross members that are still in the floor there to try to help support this thing. And you can see plain as day where all this water would just go right up in there if you was actually drive this thing in some bad weather. So that's not real great. Same thing over here. Then you can see right here, this is where they've cut the frame, and to get the right wheelbase, they had to stretch it. So they added a piece of square tubing in here, which I guess is all right, but it's just really kind of barely in there. There's not a lot holding that together. And also, you go forward, they did a little bit better job of trying to hold it all together, but look at these welds. I'm not sure I'd want to trust that at 80 miles an hour with me in it. And then this side, they didn't even cap off, and doesn't look like they even finished welding. It's just kind of there in a couple of spots. I mean, yikes. Move back up here to the transmission. They shoved probably like a 350 drive shaft in there into a 4L60E, so that doesn't work. I mean, how's that supposed to keep any training fluid in it? We got the exhaust pointing right down here to the linkage on the transmission, so that's real great. We don't even have an O2 sensor on this side. Missing some of the bell housing bolts. I mean, yeah, those aren't really all that important, right? Got a couple in there, we'll be okay. So the other thing, so like from that suspension point right there, I measured back here to our suspension point here, which these can't really move. There's no adjustment or anything in there, so those have to be right. You can't adjust that out. I mean, neither end of it's got an adjustment. So nowhere for it to go other than just being right. So from there to back here on this side is a 1/2 inch longer than it is from the ones on this side all the way up here to the ones on that side. So that means one frame rail is a 1/2 inch longer than the other. That's just ridiculous. There's no way this thing's gonna go straight down the road. We move up here a little bit further, we can see that the sway bar is not hooked up. So that's doing nothing. We've got our tranny cooler here. That's just a piece of hose. So that's real great. The end of the frame rail is just whacked off here and some more garbage just kind of slobbered on there. So I guess that's what they're going to do to try to make a bumper beyond this thing. Nothing holding the grill up to where you'd be able to actually mount the hood. They did get an LS in here. Does look like they painted the LS and maybe even put a pan gasket or something in it. I don't know, it's kind of hard to tell. But you can see there we've got battery cable sitting on the header. This thing's not adjusting, there we go. Battery cable on the header. We got some slobber welds there on a stock mount holding it to the frame. No sense in putting bolts in anything. I mean, ridiculous to have all these bolts holding stuff together, right? I don't know. So there's a lot going on there with things that are wrong on this thing. I mean, we're talking about cutting the chassis completely apart, redoing it. Pretty much a complete floorboard through the whole thing, and all the cross members in there to be able to support the floorboard, because you can't just leave it the one thickness of a piece of sheet metal and not have it braced. That just doesn't work. And then also, there is nothing, I mean nothing, holding this body to the frame other than the steering column, brake lines, and a couple of battery cables and things like that. That's it. That's all holding the thing to the frame. And there was another shop that actually turned this out and said that this was a good car, that you could take it, run it, and drive it, told the customer that this was a driving car and it was ready to go to a shop for paint. I can't believe somebody would do that to someone else and actually charge them pretty good money to do that as well. And when the car's down on the ground, you can't see any of that kind of stuff. You can't tell, and it's only a few inches off the ground. I had to jack it up to be able to get the arms of the lift underneath it. And then now that it's on there, I can't let the arms all the way down. I mean, I can let them all the way down, but I can't get the car all the way down because it sits so low. I think they just cut the coils on the front. So, that part's kind of jacked up. On the sides here, you can see where they've trimmed out this opening around here to try to make it to where the tire would have a clearance in there. And this is all kinds of wonky all through there. I mean, it's just all over, all the way across. And all directions. I mean, there's nothing good about it at all. It's not good. We got the rocker panels over here. Let's see how bad this is. Let me flip it around. So yeah, here's our rocker panels, and see the nice welds on there. Yeah, that's just great. Come over here. This part up here looks like they probably just sit there and started running a bead across there because it's warped like crazy. I mean, we're not even close to anywhere being straight. And it's even worse the farther forward we get. I'll get you guys where you can see that there. And the rockers and the patch panel on the other side are just as bad. So really, all of that needs to come out. I mean, we shouldn't leave that. I mean, there would be almost 3/4 of an inch of mud in that seam across there if we tried to just fill that in. And in my opinion, that's not acceptable. I mean, there's certain circumstances where, sometimes it just doesn't make sense to put time and effort into some things. I'll give you that on every project for sure. But this is just pure negligence and pure not knowing what you're doing, I guess, or not caring what you're doing. I don't know, but it's wrong. It's just flat out wrong. Oh yeah, I wanted to show you guys these too. This is the fuel line, and this is just through a hole in the floor. No grommet around it, no nothing. It's just gonna sit there and work on that until it cuts it apart, and then you're gonna have a fuel leak. So that's it back down on the ground. Also, somebody else did the chop on this thing prior to whoever it was that did the stuff on the floor and the frame. So the top is kind of, I mean, it's not the best chop in the world, but it could probably be saved. They did go ahead and cut off the drip rails and stuff like that. And I guess if you were doing a custom and you didn't want, you know, everything, if you weren't planning on driving it much, I guess, you could go ahead and leave like the drip rail off and things like that, and you wouldn't have to worry about it too much. But the guy that owns this car would like to drive it. He would like to take it, you know, potentially across country or whatnot. So, you know, not having drip rails on there, the rain's gonna come right in and it's gonna go right inside the car. The fit and finish around some of the window areas and stuff like that lacks a little to be desired. And the rest of the body, originally was probably pretty good. But they've welded up all the holes along the side there for the trim and whatnot. And every one of those, they got too hot and kind of warped everything. So there's a lot of work to do there to be able to make that stuff kind of straight. The windshield area and whatnot through here, we've got a lot of filler in through this area here that shouldn't be there on the door. But again, on the top part of it, we can make the top part probably work. Wouldn't necessarily be the end of the world. So here in the back, we do have a fairly decent air compressor and an okay fuel cell, you know, for an average driver car. But fuel cell is mounted right there in the middle of everything. So can't put any luggage in this thing to speak of or anything like that. And you can't really do much to make this area decent, you know, as far as any of that goes. So that kind of sucks. And also, they didn't install an air tank, so you're gonna just completely run off of your compressors. And then there's one valve and the T thing going on there, like I was telling you about. So with that, if you have any one of those little hose clamps bust off of there, now your rear end is dragging the ground and you can't move. So that's pretty crappy. So we're gonna have to take care of all of that. So under the hood, we do have an LS underneath there. I don't know how well you guys can see that or not. Can't see it good, I'll show you in a second, but we do have an LS in here. We do have some nice brackets for some AC, and we got, looks like AC hooked up, although it's kind of just a mess the way that's laid in here, but it is there, so there is that. And even though we got AC in here, we have no heater, because the heater hoses come off the side of the water pump, and they're just looped together, so I know that there's no heater. There's no way there could be one. So we have that. Like I said, we've got wires and stuff kind of everywhere here and just kind of laying all over exhaust manifolds and things. The firewall, I mean, they've patched in stuff here on the firewall and didn't do anything to clean it up and make it nice. So if you want to make it nice and make a nice car out of it, all this has to come back apart and you have to address all of that, which I guess is not the end of the world again, but just more and more and more stuff added up to this thing to make it just kind of a mess. So I invited the guy that owns the car over to actually take a look underneath this thing and see how bad it is and whatever. And after us talking about it a little bit, we decided that it probably doesn't make sense to go forward with this car. I think we're going to end up chewing up the bigger part of his budget just trying to make this thing have a straight chassis and, you know, actually be able to safely drive down the road and not feel like the floorboards are going to fall out of it and all the other things that we'd have to do to try to make this into a decent car. We're not going to have much, you know, money left to be able to try to make it cool, make it custom, make it neat, and make it, you know, something that's worth doing. So since that thing was such a bust, we decided to get a whole nother car. This one's a 53 and it runs and drives. It's got a small block in it. It's got a Mustang 2 underneath it. It's got a few other things here and there. I'll show you guys all that here later. But we bought it last night at like 8 o'clock. It's 8 o'clock the next morning and we threw a fresh battery in it a minute ago from 2019. That fires it up, and I threw a little bit of oil and some antifreeze in the trunk, and oh, got some pliers. And we're gonna go to car show, and it's about an hour away or so, so we're gonna give this thing a little bit of a test drive here real quick. We'll see what we've got to deal with. I might be talking to you from the side of the road here in just a little bit, but we're gonna have gas. We've got gas in it, so seems to run pretty good so far. I've drove it 6 or 8 miles, so yeah, time to jump in it and just go for an hour cruise, right? Well, we're about 10 miles, 12 miles into this deal, and car's running pretty good. We're running about 55. We're not pushing it very hard. Kind of getting ran over a little bit on the highway here, but luckily there's not a lot of traffic out here today, so it's not too bad. The oil pressure is a little on the low side. It's like nothing to worry about. I mean, it's like right around 30, and I don't know, we probably aren't doing much more than about 2,500 RPM, so it's probably fine for most small block Chevys, kind of what you expect, for nothing special there. Temperature is doing great. We're sitting here at about 170 actually. It's not even really coming up to temp. I think the fan's kind of running pretty well non-stop. And then I don't know about the gas gauge. The gas gauge is buried, so that's obviously not right. And then you see somebody's passing us at like 65 or 70, so not too bad. Going down the highway okay. And voltage, we're at right about 13 on the voltage, so doing pretty good. Well, we made it about 25 miles, and Julie can't stand it. She's gonna be over there cleaning. It's dirty, she says.
We're going to a car show, so if you're at a car show, you don't hate to roll in with something filthy. Come on now.
I don't really care personally. Anyways, it's still doing great. We're still hanging in there at about 55 or 60, somewhere in that neighborhood, so doing pretty good. The inside of this thing's actually not too awful bad, really. I mean, there's no headliner.
There's no headliner, and I'm trapped in here because there are no knobs on my side of the car. So I just hear it until he lets me out.
I might let her out later. We'll see how it goes. If she's a good girl.
You know, that's a nice seat back there. I'll just climb back there and take a nap.
You probably could, actually. It's huge back there. That's a dome light, isn't it?
Yeah. Some way to put it so it's not swinging and hit you in the head.
It hasn't hit me in the head yet. It's all right. Well, we made it. No problems. Car drove out great. And I guess now we're ready to check out a car show. Well, we made it back from the car show. Did great coming back on the way. Didn't have any problems, but we do got a little bit of a problem here, I guess. Not a big deal, I don't think. Regardless, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, didn't win anything. But car didn't do too bad on the way back. So overall, pretty happy with the whole event. Thought I'd give you guys a little bit better walk around of this thing now that we're back and let you see what it's like. Like I said, car is in really good shape. Rockers look really pretty good. Quarters are looking good. The interior is pretty decent on it. We are going to have to do that chop on the top right there, so that's going to have to be a must. I don't really like the wraparound back window here. I don't like that. So I think we're going to end up taking the back window out of the other car, try to graft it in here and get rid of that one. So it's pretty cool. They got these lights in here, but you can see a bunch of body filler in that area right through there. So we're going to have to address that and make sure that's not anything that's going to be something we need to worry about. Might end up going ahead and changing the lights too. I don't know. What's your guys' thoughts in the comments below? Do you guys like the Oldsmobile lights on there or not? And then it's got a big giant flat pan back there on the back of it. I think that's got to go. We got to have something on here to kind of dress the back of this thing up a little bit and make it pop a little bit. It does have a pretty nice set of door panels in it. Seat and stuff isn't too awful bad. The dash is pretty nice in it. Does have an aftermarket set of gauges, which you guys already seen. Does have an I Did It column, and we do have a floor shifter in there. So a lot of stuff going on already to begin with. You can see down there it does have AC on it, so we'll check that out. It's got vintage air stuff in there for the controls. So under the hood right off the bat, we see that we got a nice big aluminum radiator. You can see that we've got some AC stuff in here. And still a little on the fugly side of that, but you know, that stuff's there, and it's a lot better than it is in the other car. We've got a little bit of a mess of stuff up in this area too. I don't really like the way that looks either, but we can address that. We can make that work. We do have all the rest of the stuff in here though, looking fairly decent for what it is. I mean, we've got some old Mickey Thompson valve covers in there. We've got chrome pulleys and some decent brackets and stuff here on the front of this thing. You see we got an Edelbrock carburetor on there. We've got aftermarket brake booster and stuff there, so there's that. And it looks like I was probably leaking antifreeze from that joint right down there where they've kind of put a couple of hose clamps together there on that. That's where it looks like that was probably leaking from, so not too big of a deal there. I don't know if you guys can see it or not. You can kind of see and make out that the Mustang 2 stuff is in there, so gives you an idea of that. We do have a set of headers on this thing. And also you can see the steering column going down to a shaft with a U-joint and then going down there, and this has got a rack and pinion on the front of it as well. So that's pretty cool upgrade. The rest of the firewall is way cleaner than the other car. We don't have a whole lot to address up there. A little bit of stuff here and there, but not too awful bad. I think all of the glass in the car is there and good. Not that it matters because we're going to have to cut some of it and whatnot for the chop, but this one right here, that was just sitting in there. I don't think they ever even glued it in yet, so I've got it sitting in there because it was rattling on the way back. And for wheels and tires, it's just got some old rallies on it, and it looks like they've just been rattle canned and some old tires on there, nothing too special. So anyways, that catches you guys kind of up on where we're at with this build and whatnot. So after driving the other car, it drives out pretty good. The brakes are really nice on it. The front suspension and the rear suspension both are a little stiff, but with the Mustang 2, it's not going to be too hard to be able to put some bags on there, and the back will just have to build some 4-link setup and put some bags in there and make that work. So I think after doing that, it'll actually help the ride height, of course, and then it's going to make the car actually ride down the road pretty decent, I think. So that's the direction we're going to go with that. The motor ran okay. I mean, like I said, it had kind of a little bit lower side of the oil pressure, so it obviously doesn't have a high volume pump or anything like that in it, and it's probably just an old motor that's been slapped in there. But other than that, drove out pretty good, but it's a complete dog. It's just an old 305 is what it ended up being, and automatic tranny, so there's just not a lot of power there, and it's not going to be very fun to drive. So we've already got an LS sitting here and a matching tranny for it for L60E, so we're going to go ahead and take that out of this car. We'll probably take the compressors out of this car and fuel cell and whatnot, you know, anything that we can salvage out of this thing, then we'll salvage out of this and go ahead and put into the new car. So that'll help with that. And the body on the new car is way, way, way better. So there's not really any rust in the floor to speak of. There's a spot about yay big in the trunk, so not that big of a deal there. Rockers and all that stuff seem like they're pretty solid in it. So overall, it's really a pretty solid car. Way better something to start with than this. So now with cost, after buying the other car, we're probably in that thing for around half of what it would be just to be able to get this thing kind of sorted out and be a decent car again, with all the stuff we'd have to do for metal work on it and trying to fix and align everything and all that kind of stuff. So on the chassis, so we're way ahead of the game, and we've got a lot nicer base to start with. So it's gonna be fun on the other car because we're gonna have just now all the fun, cool stuff to do too. Really, we're gonna put a badass motor in it. We're gonna put a chopped top on it. We're gonna bag it and all of that, and put some color on the thing. I don't know what color we're doing yet, but we're gonna do some color on there. And even though the other car has some really nice interior in it, I think we're gonna end up probably changing the interior all out and going with a pretty cool custom interior inside the other car too. So you guys are gonna wanna stay on top of this build and see how things go. So my plan is to go ahead and work on this car, well not this car, the other car, and the C50 build, and the next project that we're going to be having here on the channel, kind of all at the same time. Now, I've heard people kind of question, you know, why would you have, you know, so many projects going on at once and all that kind of stuff? Well, that's actually the reason why I wanted to get out of the other building that we were in, because it wasn't big enough to do that. And then what ends up happening is you're waiting on parts or pieces or just whatever, something happens and you can't go forward with the build anymore. You're now stuck. You got nothing that you can work on and you can't go further with the build. So it ends up taking longer to be able to do the builds and all that because of those situations. If we've got multiple projects to work on at once, there's always going to be something to work on. So we're always going to be able to, you know, keep moving forward with something, even if we are waiting on other parts and pieces or whatever the case is to be able to make the build go further. So that's one of the biggest things. The other big thing with having a bigger building now too is Connor's planning on staying on and working after he gets out of school, and he's going to be out of school here in just, you know, a few months. So that's going to be pretty awesome. That means that we've got 2 full-time people here working in the shop, and potentially I might have another couple people, or at least another person or whatever, that is going to also start working and doing some stuff here in the shop. So that opens up the possibility to actually do more work and do more stuff and make, you know, better videos for you guys with more build stuff in the videos and all that. So that's kind of the direction we're going with all that, and that's the reason why we're starting another build right while we're in the middle of a build. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys, and hopefully you guys can understand where that's coming from. By the way, I don't know if you guys can hear the noise in the background or not, but I think we're having like a tornado or something out here, because inside this big brick building, you don't usually hear any wind noise. So I'm gonna go up here in the front and see what it looks like outside. Holy cow. Yeah. Look at how much dirt's in the sky. Can't even hardly see the sun. Woo! Blow me over.